Now we get back to the famous meeting in June of 1963.
Yes.
The Reverend King comes back and tells you that the president knows who you are. That must have surprised you.
Well, that's a little bit of a statement. He doesn't know who I am, because he said he's a communist. And I was not in the Communist Party in '62. So he didn't say he knew me as the person that got him the Bronx.
No, he'd heard of your name. He may have not known you as an individual.
Okay. Well, yes. He could have heard of my name. Yeah, sure. I really don't know. But he had been told to talk to Dr. King. That's why they had the meeting.
Yes.
He'd been instructed by Bobby to speak with Dr. King away from the other members. Go out in the garden and tell him you got to get rid of. But he said Odell and Leveson.
Yeah.
So that's the way it went. And that's what led to Martin's immediate response. I don't know how much time Jack has to be no communist, because he's got 2 jobs with me. Because I was the only person in SCLC that had 2 jobs, 2 relatively full-time jobs.
You told me that Martin Luther King was really reluctant to let you go.
Yeah, he had no reason to.
No, but he didn't want to.
No, he didn't. No, and it was very clear he didn't want to. He convened this meeting in New York to discuss it among his top people and me. Now, he didn't want to be foolish either. And I let it be known that, hey man, I came here to help out. I didn't care to be no obstacle. So if it's a problem, I can go. But as long as you understand that the government is telling you who you can hire, it ain't doing much on your civil rights, but it's telling you who you can have on your staff. As long as you're all clear about that, I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't stay and let these guys who are going to vote against civil rights anyway blame me that I'm the reason I'm on the staff, so I'm the reason they're voting against civil rights. No, in a way, I came there to be helpful. So Dr. King was being himself. He knew me, and there was no mysticism. If you're talking about somebody being communist, he had read Marx. He was a Hegelian. So, this is foolish to him. He didn't go for any of this stuff. He said, wait, we got work to do here, man. You bringing up an issue, bringing up an issue and an excuse, that has no relation to the fact, that we can't eat at a lunch counter or vote in some of these primaries. But he's real. He's leading a movement. And the NAACP under Roy Wilkins was very jealous of the prominence that he had achieved. And so NAACP said, well, we got no communists in our thing. The NAACP was prepared to play any kind of role to divert attention away from Dr. King back to the NAACP, where you just took out a membership, gave them some money, and then they'd get some lawyers to go to court. But this was a very good meeting. There was no rancor, or it was nothing like Jaggers in the way or nothing like that. He was trying to see, what do we do? And my position is, I'm prepared to go. It's no problem. Don't do something foolish, and then you'll get blamed for something not being successful because you held on to Jack. I didn't come here to be a problem. I came here to help. And so he understood that, and I don't think there was a time after that, between that and 1968, that he or one of his staff was in town. They'd call me and we'd get together just to have a conversation. What's going on, whatever, just to let it be known among us that he still relied upon. If I had an observation to make on something, I had an avenue through which to send it. Andy, Dorothy Cotton, Stoney Cooks, I would see them 2 or 3 times a year.
Did you ever talk to Stanley Levinson? Because Stanley Levinson also had to leave.
Yep. Well, Stanley and I talked about this. I don't recall a session just on this. The fact is, we both understood each other, and that is, we were both there to help, and therefore we were capable of being flexible if that help was going to be a hindrance. Now, Dr. King had a professional reason to hold on to Stanley if he could, because that was his lawyer. You didn't tell me I can't have a lawyer. You know what I mean? But my situation was different. I was a member of the staff, and it cost them, if this matters, it cost them quite a bit of money the time I had to leave, because it was '63, and then there was the March on Washington and the bombing of the church, you know, in Atlanta and Birmingham, and then the Kennedy assassination. And all of those things had their relationship to civil rights and public support. And for nobody to be there in the office to do some constructive work that would lead to revenue coming in so we could continue the movement, that was a big letdown. I mean,
they didn't have anyone to blame you? To replace you?
No. There was nobody that did replace me until about September, and I left in June.
Did this meeting with Dr. King happen just after he met with Kennedy, or like the next day?
Yeah, I think it was. Oh no, it wasn't the same day. It was, and it was in New York. It wasn't in Washington.
So like the next day.
Yeah, we met at the Hotel New Yorker.
Oh.
We met at the hotel because Dr. King was in town, and that's where we would get together. But as I said before, it was one of those decisions that is peculiar to what the situation was in the United States. We wanted the Kennedy's support for civil rights. The Kennedy wanted the black vote support for his presidency. But the Kennedys had to deal with also with the menace of communism, because there was a Cold War on. Now, one of the most important events of that season was his American University speech, where he said, we have differences with the Soviet Union, but we don't have any differences with any country that we would blow the world up based upon a nuclear war, based upon it. They said, no. That's a very significant, man, that was a very significant address.